And welcome back to Capitol Tonight. If Governor Cuomo's redistricting plan does pass the legislature, my next guest will have a say about who's on the commission. He's Assembly Republican leader Brian Kolb, and he's celebrating a big win today. Thanks very much for being here.
Great to be with you, Liz.
We think it's a big win. We think.
I'm 99.999% sure.
Okay, but there's a small percentage there.
Not really.
Which is, and in that small percentage is a potential appeal by Mr. Skartaris, right? What we're talking about, of course, is the 100th Assembly District. This is, we talked to Tom Kerwin yesterday. He's excited. This was the last legislative race in the country to be decided, is that correct?
In the country, if you can believe that, since November 2nd of 2010.
We've actually talked about this a couple of times since you've been on and since November, and we've always been like, what's going on in the 100th? And you've told us. I actually received from a reader of the blog a fundraising appeal that you guys sent out using this thing as, and you accused the Democrats of trying to steal the election. What were you talking about?
Well, basically what we're suggesting is that the lower court judge had ruled that these incomplete affidavit ballots shouldn't be counted, and they're trying to use the legal process to try to flip that around on a judicial decision. So we actually sent the fundraiser request out last week, basically because there's legal costs involved. We've had legal costs all along the way on this. It's been a long, drawn-out circumstance.
Sure.
And quite frankly, we believe that there will be more special elections along the way this year. So this is really, we've achieved a terrific milestone, and we want to make sure that we stay there and maybe even increase our members.
Where are you now then with membership, assuming that Kerwin does come back?
We will be at 51.
Okay. Before we get to the magic number of what 51 means, we know at least one other special election. It's actually Darrell Towns' district. Now that's actually down in Brooklyn. That is a Democrat-dominated district. Are you going to bother in there?
We will definitely have an opponent. You know that those districts are always tough to win in, but we don't want to have any election non-contested if we can help it. So we're seeking to find an opponent to whoever is going to run on behalf of Assemblyman Towns' spot, and we'll see what happens. But, you know.
We are hearing the reason why he's leaving, of course, is because he's going to be taking a job in the Cuomo administration. We've also heard rumblings of maybe another upstate lawmaker. I know you know who I'm talking about, but I don't want to give it away because it hasn't happened yet, and we're not sure that it will. But I assume that if there is an upstate seat that becomes empty, you will make a play for that one.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, we're always trying to add more members and keep the members that we have. And whether it's upstate, downstate, the island, you know, that's what the campaigns are all about, and making sure that we have a full voice in the Assembly and in the legislature. So
51 is significant because you have robbed the Assembly Democrats, essentially, of their veto-proof majority.
It breaks a supermajority. The Democrats will say, oh, that's not really a big deal.
Yes, many times they've said that.
Which means doth protest too much.
Is that what you think?
So I think it's significant if and when a veto override becomes an issue. But more importantly, it's 12 seats that we've picked up in a year. Unheard of in 40 years.
No, a huge year for you.
And it has a difference on committees, on the floor debate. There's 12 less lockstep votes for the Assembly Democrats and their policies. So it makes a huge dynamic change within the chamber. And I think it's better democracy to have a closer margin between the majority and the minority, as you find in the Senate. Makes for better government. Now,
the reason why Speaker Silver has said that he doesn't think it's significant is because he has never in the past been able to generally hold the whole conference together. He says, my members don't usually vote all together as a block. Generally speaking, in the past, when there have been override votes, there have been not a few Republicans who have sometimes joined the Democrats and would see fit to do things like, say, increase education spending that was vetoed out of the governor's budget. Would you see at this point, if there's been talk, Senator John DeFrancisco was on this show suggesting that the Senate and Assembly could go their own way and do what we call a two-way deal on the budget, which would jam Governor Cuomo, and then he would veto it. That's when the override would come into play. And if that legislative budget added education aid, added Medicaid spending, would your members be hard-pressed to say no?
Well, certainly all those are potential hypotheticals. You know, what's interesting about the Assembly Democrats' reaction is that they sure spend a lot of time, effort, and money for a seat that doesn't matter much. And certainly I think in the whole dynamics of the process, there's so many possibilities. The important thing is that no matter how it unfolds in the coming weeks with the budget, we have a stronger, more conservative fiscal voice, pocketbook issues, economic development, reforming Albany, ethics reform, redistricting reform, and I think our conference has been stalwarts on economic development, lowering property taxes, lowering the cost and size of state government. More voices doing that makes a huge difference on committee and legislative bills.
But this makes you potentially a more powerful player. I mean, does it not, just from a purely political standpoint, if in fact it came to the point of an override and you were able to deliver your entire conference as a block, then you would be an ally with Governor Cuomo in blocking an override effort of a veto in the Assembly.
The great news about that, anything's possible, and absolutely that could be a possibility.
Do you think that you could hold your whole conference together?
Depends on the issue, sure, but we have independent voices as well. But I can tell you one thing, our conference is much more independent than the Assembly Democrats are. And if you're ever around late night sessions when they're twisting arms to get people to vote because some of their members have left for the day, huge difference. So I think...
so you never do any arm twisting?
Nope.
Do you do heavy urging?
Nope. Have not?
Never.
Never.
So you never tell your members how to vote?
Nope.
Or even ask them to vote a certain way?
Nope.
Huh.
Absolutely not.
But would you feel compelled to if you thought that it was you guys were standing between a budget that really was fiscally conservative, like the one that Andrew Cuomo was seeking, and increasing spending perhaps for education, which is an area that's going to be a sticking point and we shouldn't just say in the Assembly, but also with the Senate Republicans on the other side who control the other house?
Certainly that would be something for the conference to decide as a whole. You know, sometimes when we do hostile amendments, we have unanimity on a hostile amendment, or we don't do it. Primarily because it may have a detrimental effect on some other portion of the state or region that our members represent. And the most important thing I always tell our members, your most important job as a legislator is to represent your district, first and foremost. And then after that, we'll talk about political strategy and other strategies within the institution in terms of how we do things or not do things. But even myself, my number one priority is the 129th Assembly District. And then, quite frankly, in this business in past years, there's been too much focus on Republican-Democrat politics rather than doing what's right for the state.
So you believe, actually it was sort of interesting, Mr. Kerwin said yesterday during this brief interview that he had heard that Assemblyman Skartatos had conceded on Facebook. Now there's a report that he had indeed conceded on Facebook, but he took it down very quickly, and his attorneys, he's waiting for his attorneys to tell him whether an appeal is possible. The Assembly Democrats are making noises a little bit that they're upset with the ruling. If there is an appeal, do you believe that actually Tom Kerwin would win?
Tom Kerwin's going to be our sitting assemblyman in the 100th Assembly District. It's just a matter of whether it's today, tomorrow, or a week from now. He's won this race, the appellate division 4-0, not a split decision, and in their decision, their appeal is without merit. Now, this is an appellate panel, so anything that the Democrats now do to delay Tom Kerwin's taking a seat is about delay and not and having a disservice to the member or to the constituents of the 100th Assembly District.
And they'd have to appeal to the state's highest court, and the Court of Appeals would then subsequently have to agree to hear the case. So it's not a foregone conclusion that it would automatically get heard. That's the way it works, right?
That's correct.
Okay. You haven't heard yet from Governor Cuomo one way or another? Did he call to congratulate you, or no?
I haven't heard from anybody other than my members and our ecstatic staff who work so hard. We feel this is a great testimony to the entire conference and our employees and our political team and our members. You know, we've really worked hard to get here, and I'm just so proud of our efforts statewide.
I want to talk to you briefly about this redistricting bill. It's quite long, and so I don't want to quiz you on the details because it just came out and it's really dense. It's 19 pages of all new legislation, basically. It's all a completely rewritten bill. So, generally speaking, though, the governor has pledged to clean up Albany, to change the way things are done here, and the first thing that he's out of the box with in terms of reform is redistricting reform. Are you feeling generally that this might be something that you could support, because the Senate Republicans are not so sure?
Well, on independent redistricting committee, absolutely I'm in support of that. The particular bill that you're talking about, the 19-page bill that the governor just put out today, we're obviously reviewing. Some of the early indications that I got from some of our staff is that there's pieces of the bill that are flawed, because the most important thing are quantities of an independent, nonpartisan, and fair and equitable commission. And we believe that there's some flaws in the way this bill's been drafted. Too early to really give you all the specifics, but my comment to you is we would offer, obviously, suggestions to amend the bill to make sure that it is fair, it's nonpartisan, and there's no advantage to any political party, Republican or Democrat.
Because it seems like there is something of a built-in advantage here for Democrats. Now, the problem is, of course, it's a Democrat-dominated state. So even if it's fair, the most fair way that you would see fit, it's still going to benefit Democrats. There are more Democrats than Republicans in New York.
Well, there's more Democrats than Republicans, but if you're going to set up a nonpartisan legislative redistricting commission, you have to literally take the politics out of it. There can't be any even slight advantage to anybody in the process, or it's a faulted bill. And certainly, again, as I mentioned earlier, we believe there might even be a problem constitutionally on the Equal Protection Clause in terms of fair representation, the demographics about upstate, downstate, the island, and all that enters into play. So that's why I want to be clear, is I've been at the forefront of saying nonpartisan, independent redistricting.
Well, you signed Ed Koch's pledge, did
Absolutely.
you not? And you promised that you would, in that pledge, co-sponsor independent redistricting commission legislation by March 1st. Can you get there?
Absolutely. Well, if we're not there on this bill, we'll have our own bill that is a better bill if we think that this bill is flawed.
Ah, that's interesting. So you will put out your own bill, and in that way you believe that you have fulfilled Ed Koch's pledge.
Well, really, it's not just about the pledge. It's the pledge that we think that would make better government. And so my comment is that if we end up modifying or amending the governor's bill to make it really a good bill, I have no problem supporting the governor's bill with amendments. So, but if he's not willing to amend his bill, now that's when we will come up with our own suggestions, because it's not about saying no, it's about offering different ideas and different solutions, which is what we would do.
Okay. Assembly Minority Leader Brian Kolb, thank you very much for being with us. It's
Always a
good to
pleasure,
see you.
Liz. Thanks.